Hello again, fellow time travelers. Welcome to the third episode of The Story of Everything, which is called Chapter 0. So if you haven't seen them yet, go back and look at the prologue, which is the first episode, and then Chapter Infinity, that's the sideways 8 symbol, infinity, which is the second episode. This is called Chapter 0 because we're going back to look at the universe at time equals 0 seconds. And contrary to what you might have seen in TV shows, it wasn't a blinding flash of light, but it was total darkness. So if you're in darkness, you'll like this episode. Others of you might be bored by these visuals, but the whole point is to see things the way they actually looked, as if we were really there. So I also want to mention that there's a lot of dialogue, a lot of back and forth between us, the reader, Olive, and Sophia. And so that I don't have to keep saying, I said, she said, I replied, she replied, and so on and so forth. Wherever it seems reasonably clear who's talking, I'm just going to leave it as is. If you get lost, you can always check out the chapters in print over on Substack. Okay, see you next time. Are we dead? I asked in a voice that never left my mouth. We were in a place, if you could call it that I can only describe as infinitely claustrophobic. There was no up, down, or side to side. I couldn't tell whether I was oriented in no position or every position. The darkness was so palpable that I couldn't see my hands or even breathe. In fact, I didn't seem to have hands or lungs or even a body. Where are we? I asked. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, Sophia replied. She seemed to be speaking in the exact center of my mind. Where's that? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's the first verse in the Bible, and it's a key that unlocks infinite mysteries. It's like a first fractal iteration. A what? It's a microcosm. A what? A miniature version of the whole of reality. Everything is in that verse. It's the complete inventory of everything that exists. There is uncreated reality and created reality. And creation can be summarized in 2 words, heaven and earth. As Christians say in the Creed, I believe in one God, maker of heaven and earth, of all things, visible and invisible. And all of this had a beginning, because reality as a whole is a story. And the story is about, I interrupted, God and the heavens and the earth. That's right, Sophia said. Why did God do that? I asked. Do what? Why in the beginning did God create the heavens and the earth? Well, that's the whole story, isn't it? That's the meaning of life, the ultimate answer to why anything exists at all. I would tell you now, but then there'd be no story left to tell. I want to know now. You must be patient. The mysterious story begins as a tiny seed and unfolds over time until it reaches its full flowering. As it unfolds and you experience the story and humanity's struggle to understand it, you will appreciate the answer much more when the time is right. Okay, then what did you mean by reality? By reality, I mean all things. And what is uncreated reality? She replied, if it's not created, it's God. If it's not God, it's created. What I mean by that is that there is only God and what God gives being and nothing else. God and not God. That's it. I brought you to the beginning so that you could have the largest possible perspective. What's the biggest thing you can think of? Everything, I replied. And reality in the biggest sense means everything, Sophia said. God and creation, past, present, and future. Reality even includes your imagination and your wildest dreams, even falsehoods, because those are things too, residing in your mind. So there is no thing it doesn't include. Even nothing is a kind of thing, at least insofar as it is a concept in the mind. So reality means everything, and not just everything, but everything the way it actually is. Everything in its right place, I said. Yes, even if you were to doubt everything you know, which you do, and this is why you were chosen, you would at the very least know this without any possible doubt, that there is something, and this something is the way it is. This is reality. This is what everyone wishes they knew, even those who refuse to acknowledge reality and who make up their own, because once they say there is no reality, they contradict themselves, since they're describing how things really are. Understanding the whole of reality is the goal of knowledge, and the first thing the Bible informs us of is that God created everything in the beginning, and the first word it gives us is Bereshit. It means in the beginning. And that's the answer to where we are. We saw the beginning of heaven, the invisible world, the perfect and complete world, and now we are at the beginning of space and time, the visible world, the earthly material world, the world that journeys from incomplete to complete, from imperfect to perfect. Then I understood we had flipped to the other side. We're in that little point I saw in God's hand, aren't we? Yes, we're at t equals 0 seconds. I replied, this doesn't seem like a very visible world. The heavenly world was much more vivid. Sophia replied, to mortal eyes, the spiritual heavens are invisible, but this material universe will become visible once it gets going and we have our bodies back. Where did our bodies go? Your actual body is still back home on Earth in the 21st century, fast asleep in your closet. But I'm giving us imaginary bodies that seem real so that you can experience what history is like. Right now, our imaginary bodies are scrunched up with all the other matter and energy in the universe into one tiny point. No wonder it feels so crowded. It's beyond crowded here, Sophia said. There were trillions of galaxies in the universe you could see when you left home. What are galaxies? They are collections of gas, dust, stars, and planets. Your home galaxy is called the Milky Way. The whole universe is just a lot of empty space sprinkled with trillions of galaxies and filled with tiny particles of matter and energy. And the universe in your time is at least 250 times larger than what you can see with the most powerful telescopes, perhaps even billions of times larger. Some think it's infinite. So that's at least 250 trillion galaxies, perhaps a trillion and more. And each galaxy in your time has several million to a few trillion stars. And most of these stars have 1 to a few dozen planets. Add all the hydrogen and helium gas filling the universe, the dust clouds filling the galaxies, all the photons and neutrinos, all the dark matter and all the dark energy, and it's inconceivably crowded here. Because all of that stuff, and I mean all of it, in your 21st century universe is now crushed into this tiny point here at 0 seconds. How big is the universe here? I asked. You mean how big is the universe, period? We're not just at the beginning of time, we're at the beginning of space as well. Time and space are so intimately connected, we could call them space-time. This unity is even reflected in the word Bereshit, where in, which is a spatial term, and beginning, which is a temporal term, are joined together to form what is in Hebrew a single word, in the beginning. So if time equals 0, space must also equal 0, which means there is no space. The universe is infinitely small. It has no radius, no diameter. Imagine that, Mother. Everything you see around you, this book you hold in your hands, the 10 fingers on your hands, the 10 toes on your feet, your house or cave or whatever, all the sand on every shore, all the rocks, and the sky, the clouds, the ocean, the sun, the stars, and all the planets, the whole Milky Way, and every galaxy, all crushed into a dot smaller than the period at the end of this sentence, and then crush it some more into something smaller than an atom, or even the tiny nucleus of an atom. We're not even close yet to how tiny and dense the universe was at the very beginning, because the universe was so small it had no size at all. Sophia went on to explain, scientists and mathematicians call such a point a singularity, and singularities are difficult to understand, especially the Big Bang singularity, since it's hard to understand how something with zero size and that existed for 0 seconds could even be considered real. And because there was no size, it was infinitely dense, and so the temperature was infinitely high. But such infinities don't seem to have any real meaning. What does infinitely hot mean? So the universe at time 0 was more of an idea than a reality, and yet it was real. Any beginning of a quantity, whether of length or time, by necessity must have a point 0, which is hardly anything at all, and yet a point or an edge is a reality. It is the borderline between something and nothing. In any case, the singularity is where our universe, our story of everything begins. It is often called the Big Bang itself, which is ironic, considering that it wasn't big and nothing banged, because nothing can happen within a duration of 0 seconds. Some scientists prefer to consider the Big Bang as truly beginning when at least a minimum size or minimum quantity of time can be represented with meaningful mathematics. Even the originator of the Big Bang theory, a Catholic priest named Georges Lemaitre, said, "If the world has begun from a single quantum, the notions of space and time would altogether fail to have any meaning at the beginning." But while the singularity wasn't big or banging, infinite temperature and density tend not to be very stable. Space itself isn't stable. Einstein discovered that space naturally wants to either expand or contract depending on its contents, and right now it wants to expand really bad. I asked, so the Big Bang was when God let that tiny point loose, when he snapped his fingers? She replied, poetically speaking, you could say that, yes. How did the universe go from this point of crushed mush to planets and people reading books? I'll show you in these first chapters you're going to write. Oh, right, I'm going to write a book, apparently. Yes, she said. It will be a kind of journal of what you see and learn. And in the first few chapters, you're going to see how the universe unfolded, step by step, in the first few tiny fractions of a second. In fact, this book you're going to write is the tale of how your mother and all her children, the human race, came to exist. And this story was written into the very fabric of the universe in that first split second. So it's important that we look closely at this tiny early seed of a universe to understand how the universe works and how it could unfold into planets and people and books. Not to repeat myself, but where are we? I asked. We're everywhere, Sophia said. Every single point in space that will ever exist in the universe is piled on top of the other. And right now, there is no space, so place is meaningless. I thought. Does that mean each human has already been to every galaxy and every star and every planet and every atom? Sophia thought about it. Well, yes, I guess it does. If we all came from a single point, everything was touching. But it's not a point in space. Rather, all of space is a point right now. What's outside this point? I asked. Nothing. If there were an outside, there would be space. But this is the beginning of space. It's like asking what's before the first word of the Bible. There is no before the beginning. There is only in the beginning. You can't get behind the beginning, and you can't get outside of space. I'm not sure I understand. I mean, I kind of think I do understand, but wait, the angels in heaven are outside the point. We saw it. God was holding it in his hand. What we saw is what we might call an imaginary vision the angelic spirits share. In reality, heaven, at least right now, is nothing other than the angels, and the angels are pure spirits, pure minds. They don't have material bodies that fill space. Just like if you were to think of one of the angels in your mind, your thought wouldn't occupy space in your brain. There wouldn't be a mini angel occupying part of your head. In a similar way, the angels are sizeless conscious minds. The bodies you saw are not real bodies, but are imaginary bodies that express their identity. And you could say that all the angels share the same image world. Like a virtual reality environment? Kind of. I suppose you could say it's like they're all dreaming, and by God's power, they are all sharing the same dream. Let's say for now that it's as if they share the same mental image world in which they perceive each other as having bodies and clothing and heaven as having structures and furnishings. Not that they're asleep, just the opposite. They're far more awake than humans are at their most lucid. So the heavenly realm you saw doesn't exist in any material way. It's a shared vision. The reason it seemed more real and solid and perfect, and the reason you could so clearly see brightness that would blind human eyes, is that you were experiencing their shared vision. Human senses have imperfections, from limited acuity to little blobs floating across your eyes. But because the angels see everything without the mediation of a fleshly body, everything in their fully awake image world is more vivid than it is for fleshly humans. I said, so that means that all the billions of angels in the dream heaven in their minds are also crammed together with us in this tiny point. Sophia said, yes, everything is here, the whole heavens and the earth in one infinitely tiny point. So God, who also doesn't have a size and isn't made of stuff, wasn't really holding the universe in his hand literally. It was an image story for the angels and us to see, so that we could rejoice in God's work. And because angels are pure minds with no need for a body and nervous system to relay information to them, they perceive things instantaneously through God's power. For that reason, they can experience something like the vision of creation we just saw as an unfolding story, even though everything we saw happened in one single instant, the first instant of creation. We are inside that first instant. Everything we all saw is here in this universe that has yet to expand. Did that vision really happen? Well, that was more for you and Chava to see. But something more or less like that did happen that allowed the angels the ability to witness the creation of the heavens and the earth, even from the very first instant. Regarding the angelic realm, I'm showing you what the most ancient stories have in common. Humans don't always know exactly what happened in the past, and it's okay and even necessary to express what you do know of it in story form. And I'm showing you the most ancient stories humans have written about the beginning of the story of everything. Okay, so I know we're at t equals 0 seconds, I said. But when exactly is that? She replied, well, I don't want to ruin all the fun you humans will have in trying to narrow down the exact age of the universe, but what I can tell you is that it's about 13,800,000,000 years ago, give or take 100 million years. At least that's what humans currently know in the early 21st century. Wait, I heard that the Bible says that the universe is 6,000 years old. You're an angel. Are you saying the Bible isn't true? She replied, the story of creation in the Bible is meant to convey knowledge of the relationship between God and his creation. This knowledge is so rich, so profound, that it is best conveyed in symbolic imagery, not a list of scientific facts. The Bible is not a science textbook, nor was it intended to be. Ancient people didn't think the same way 21st century people think, and they valued different things. We must try to enter their world and see through their eyes to understand what they wrote, not demand that their words fit our modern preconceptions or tastes. Long story short, the creation story in Genesis tells us truths about God and his creation by using powerful symbolic imagery. We will talk more about this when I show you the creation story according to the words of Genesis, and we will eventually see other creation stories as well from other ancient cultures. There are some who are skeptical of scientific explanations of the beginning of the universe that seem to conflict with the literalistic interpretation of their own creation story. But even if someone doesn't accept the Big Bang Theory as an accurate description of the beginning of the universe, they still need to know what it is if they're going to try to make a competent argument against it. So I'm going to show you both the scientific story and the literal Genesis story, which are both essential to know. Are we at the Big Bang then? Is that what t equals 0 seconds means? Yes, it's the beginning, and we're literally in it. But I should caution you, because so little is known about the very earliest fractions of a second of the Big Bang, there are many different models of what might have happened. I'm going to show you the most common model of the very early universe. I guess you could say the textbook version. Show it, I demanded, so we can get out of here and stretch our arms again. Technically, you will never be able to get out of here because here just so happens to be the whole universe. But I know what you mean. To understand what happened during the Big Bang, you must understand the basic ingredients of the universe. And because everything right now is formless and undefined, we'll start with the two most basic conceivable things. These two things are the deepest secrets of being, that which is potential and that which is actual, potency and act. Right now, the universe is just what Aristotle would have called prime matter, which is the potency, in composition with form, which is the act. But even the form is formless in the singularity because it doesn't have the time or space yet to make itself known. What is prime matter, I asked. Prime matter, also called first matter or primary matter by the philosophers, isn't matter as described by modern science, unless you consider it to be the undefined potential of what physicists call the quantum vacuum. What is the quantum vacuum? You could think of it as the restlessness of empty space, which isn't really empty, since prime matter is everywhere. Quantum mechanics tells us that empty space is constantly crackling with the energy that is naturally educed from pure potential. Prime matter, considered in itself, is pure potency, pure potential, nothing actual. It's not matter in the sense of atoms and molecules. No, prime matter is infinitely more basic than that. It is what underlies all physical things, both the normal matter that scientists study and energy. One prominent scientist seems to have it in mind when he refers to the grid. And because it underlies all observable physical phenomena, it is of itself unobservable and unknowable, so it doesn't really concern scientists in their day-to-day activities. It's more the object of philosophical reflection, which is what the more interesting scientists do when they get home and wonder about what everything is really made of. What's prime matter? I repeated. Sophia chuckled at my deadpan insistence. The most accurate description I can give you is that it is pure potency, pure potential, pure capacity for a perfection of some kind. It's what all material substances are ultimately made of. It is that which takes forms, that which can take any form, the way a ball of clay can be shaped, formed into anything you wish. It can take any form exactly because it is pure potency, pure potential. And at t equals 0 seconds, there are no definite forms yet. Space is spaceless and time is timeless, because no distance or duration has stretched prime matter out yet. The so-called quantum fields that we will soon see are not yet fields, because a field needs space. Furthermore, the forces we'll see aren't really forces yet, because they have nothing to act on, and the laws of physics don't apply to anything because there's nothing to apply them to. So nothing has any properties or characteristics yet. Still, prime matter always has forms. It couldn't exist without them. But right now, prime matter has only one form: formlessness. Or rather, every possible form all jumbled up within the potentiality of prime matter. As a result, the basic ingredients of the universe haven't differentiated themselves yet. The basic ingredients are right now in a state of pure potential. Again, everything in the physical material universe is just those two ingredients right now: prime matter and form. Together, form and prime matter make substances of various kinds, but right now, because the universe lacks any specificity, it is a single substance we can only call body. Body how, I asked? Like a human body? By body, I mean any material thing as opposed to spiritual. An atom is a body, a rock is a body, a star is a body, a skyscraper is a body, a cat is a body. Our focus right now in witnessing the Big Bang is material bodies, the stuff that the natural sciences examine and describe. We're going to watch as the universe expands from this infinitely tiny, featureless body into the giant universe filled with galaxies that you know in the 21st century. Expand, I asked. You mean explode? She replied, the universe didn't exactly explode into being. It wasn't an explosion or a bang, even though it was an insanely energetic event. It was simply the universe growing from tiny to large, and it went through different phases and different properties depending on its size. Right now, though, there is no size. There are no features. I interrupted, just placelessness and emptiness. Yes, she replied. There's been no time for anything to become actual, and this state of things existed for exactly 0 seconds. What you're seeing is as close to nothing as you can possibly get without it actually being nothing. Remember, that's what prime matter is, the tiniest step up from nothing. So slight that were it not to have even the formless form it has right now, it would only be an idea in God's mind. The universe is but a whisper right now. All we can say is that it's infinitely hot and infinitely dense. But it's not accurate to say even that, because temperature is a measure of certain vibrations in space and time, and density has no useful physical meaning when there are no particles and no space by which to measure the density of particles or fields. Still, and this is very important for you to understand, everything in the universe of your day is here. It just hasn't become the kind of thing it's destined to be yet. The bang of the Big Bang isn't how the universe was created, it's how the universe unfolded. T equals 0 is the moment of creation, but everything after that is the unfolding of that creation. Everything after is simply the actualization of the potential forms that are already here in a few undifferentiated megaforms. My head is about to explode into a new universe, I said. She replied, we should move on then and see what happens to the universe next. Wait, I interrupted. I've always wanted to know, where did the Big Bang happen? If we knew that, we'd know where the center of the universe is. She replied, because the whole universe was once a sizeless point, the Big Bang happened everywhere. every single point in space from the center of your brain to the farthest galaxy was the center of the Big Bang. And if we could call points in space observers, then each point in space saw its own unique version of the Big Bang. It saw all other points in space expanding away from it in one big expanding orb with itself in the center. So it happened everywhere, and each observer is the center of its own unique view of the universe, because the Big Bang is simply the expansion of space. So everywhere there is space, there was the Big Bang. I replied, okay, I'll have to let that sink in. Also, before we move on, I have one more question. I'm dying to know. Go ahead. What is the light? What light? She asked. The light you saw in the angel of the Lord's eyes? Yes. I saw the face of God, and it was more beautiful than I could have possibly imagined. And why do you ask? Well, if God designed his own angelic vision body, he can't have chosen random colors and forms. It must mean something. It must be revelation, and a very special kind of revelation. I mean, it's what he looks like. Very good, Sophia said. I'm pleased that you recognize this. I was hoping you would. You're right, his appearance is not arbitrary. It has meaning. I'll show you what it means in time. Right now, it's time to witness the bang of the Big Bang.